Baseball is back, and there really is nothing like a home team advantage. That's why Team Toyota makes an obvious choice for your next vehicle purchase or service. With their MVP pricing guarantee, teammates reward program, and streamlined customer experience, their award-winning sales and service departments are there for all of your vehicle needs. A home team advantage is nothing without family and community. Their employees are part of the family, they're part of your town, and we're all part of the team. Visit teamtoyota.net and choose one of their 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey everybody, thank you for checking out the Phillies Talk podcast, listening or watching on YouTube. I'm Corey Seidman here in DC for the Phillies' first road series of the season. He's Ricky Batalico back in the studio at NBC Sports Philadelphia. Our producer is Spencer McKercher. We'll hear from him in a little bit. But Ricky, the Phillies, it's been an uneven first week. They're 7 games in as we sit down to record this, going into the second game of the National Series. And, you know, really, the starting pitching is where I want to begin, because 7 games in, you could argue that 6 of the 7 have been very strong starts from the Phillies staff. Aaron Nola bounced back, although he walked 4 batters in the series opener in D.C. But what have you made so far of the starting pitching? And, is this kind of what you expected to see?
Well, we'll start at the top. Wheeler, as expected, I guess you would say. I mean, he's really throwing the ball well. He's gotten in through 6 innings and 2 starts. I think he's the ace of the ace right now. It just seems as though he was ready to go in spring training. He carried that over, which is special. And he's looked pretty good in both of his starts. So that's number one. They were both winnable games. Sometimes the ball doesn't fall in the right places. You get your bullpen falling apart in his first start. So, okay, you take that with a grain of salt. Aaron Nola, his first start was ugly, to say the least. I thought in his second start, he utilized his fastball a lot more, and I'm combining the sinker and the 4-seamer. I thought he utilized that a lot more. He had really good movement, running movement on his sinker. A pitch we really didn't see in the first game, and this is a pitch that I think is his bread and butter, is that 2-seamer that comes back off of the hip of a lefty and into the inside corner of the plate. That pitch he used well against Washington, so that's a positive to me, and I think it only helps his curveball. When your main pitch and you're throwing your percentage-wise the highest, your curveball, man, you better be on top of it, because there's a lot of curveballs that you're going to spin, and you're not going to get on top of the baseball, and you're not going to snap it into the bottom of the zone. That's why I think what he did against Washington was impressive to me, that he learned from his first start and said, all right, I got to utilize my fastball more, and he did that extremely well. You know, as you go down into the rotation, Ranger, besides his first 2 batters of his last start, he was really good after that. Kind of settled in, threw his pitches where he wanted to. That's exactly what we expect from Ranger Suarez, I think, a guy that just goes out there and, kind of if something happened, he just kind of shrugs it off and moves on. And he did that well in his first start. Christopher Sanchez is exactly what you thought he would be. Guy that's going to come in, try to pound the strike zone, and he did a pretty good job. Turnbull was surprisingly good in his start. He's a guy that's had injuries. He was really good before his injuries. Maybe he's just getting back to that 100% mark where he could just start throwing the ball well and not have any pains, no aches, and just go out there and pitch. So I think right now the starting rotation is more than you could ask for. I mean, in all honesty, I don't know. You probably should be 5-2 right now instead of 3-4.
Right. When you look at the Turnbull situation in the number 5 spot, he's already providing the sort of rotation that the Phillies would hope for. And when you map out Taijuan Walker's rehab, I wrote about this yesterday, but so Walker is scheduled to throw a live batting practice session Saturday at Nationals Park. And from there, the Phillies are going to decide whether he goes out on a rehab assignment or throws BP again. Even if you even if he begins a rehab assignment, let's say midweek next week, the Phillies would want to get him at least 4 or 5 starts pretty much a full spring training's worth of starts because of all the time he's missed. So you're looking at like early May, mid-May potentially, which increases the importance of Spencer Turnbull. It's probably going to make, like, if he stays healthy, I would think at least 7 or so turns through this rotation. I saw out of him in his first start, particularly with 2 strikes, had some put-away stuff. Early on, we haven't seen that sort of put-away stuff from Aaron Nola, whose swinging strike rate is down about 3% compared to the league average and his career average. Some of that could be because the Nationals are such a contact-oriented team. They don't swing and miss a ton to begin with. But, kind of seeing some signs for optimism in the bullpen because there were the opening day scuffles of Matt Strahm and Jose Alvarado. But since then, they've both been lights out. 3 straight hitless, scoreless appearances for Strahm and Alvarado. Several guys, Hoffman, Junior Marte, Gregory Soto, who enter Saturday unscathed. People overreact to what you see the first day of the season, the first weekend of the season, but this is still a bullpen that has depth and it has top-end talent. There's a reason why, it was so highly ranked entering the season and why it was one of the best bullpens in baseball a year ago. You're seeing if the Phillies can get the ball to the 6th or 7th inning, they have as good a chance to win as any team.
They're going to get back. They're going to get back to a top bullpen. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You see Alvarado lately, he seems like he's firing on all cylinders, and he had a complete disaster in his first appearance. I wasn't worried about him. The guy I was worried about was Connor Brogdon, and he's no longer with the team. I think Strahm, he's one of those guys. He'll take the ball so much that his numbers are going to even out throughout the season, and he seems to be throwing the ball well. His numbers are down a little bit. Like his velocity is down just a little bit if you watch him right now. But in that case, I mean, he's just a guy that's going to challenge you anyways. He doesn't worry all that much about his velocity, and he just wants to move the ball and hit his spots. And Gregory Soto's been really good. And I think the one thing you watch from Soto is midseason, because last year, I believe that he was overused early because of the absence of Sir Anthony and Alvarado, and he really kind of had to put the brunt of the bullpen on his shoulders. And he did a really nice job early on the first, 2 or 3 months of the season. Then you could see, not really tired, but wear and tear kind of gets on your shoulders and it kind of brings you down a little bit. But other than that, I mean, I like the bullpen. Hoffman, my goodness, this guy's got some nasty stuff. People just kind of take him and put him in the back of their minds because he's a guy that just goes out there and does his job. I mean, when you don't have to talk about somebody from the bullpen, that means they're doing their job. And he's done a really nice job so far. Sir Anthony loved it in his appearance against the Nationals. The one thing that I liked is that his fastball, he had really good command with it. And his slider finally has depth. And I'm wondering if he's just starting to gain confidence. He's starting to get to that level where he feels comfortable every time he goes out there. And when you do that as a reliever, that's half the battle, because sometimes even you look at Alvarado's first outing, that puts doubts in your mind. And as a reliever, you just got to forget about it. You got to leave everything at home and come back the next day like nothing happened. Sometimes that's easier said than done. But I think this bullpen is heading in the right direction, and I think they're going to get better as time moves forward.
Ryan Kerr is first eligible to be at the injured list on April 9th. It's unclear if he's going to be back right on April 9th. The Phillies are going to be careful with Kerkering after he missed so much time in camp. But this is the Junior Marte. While he is one of the Phillies' lower leverage relievers, he's pitched very well to open the season. He's a guy who has good stuff, big velocity. If he can just get ahead in counts, if he can throw strikes, we see every year guys emerge, relievers emerge out of nowhere. Jeff Hoffman last season, Andrew Bellotti the year before, huge strikeout numbers and a low 3s ERA. So, every year we see guys kind of solidify themselves. It's a question of how long it can last. But if the Phillies have one more guy that they can trust in 7th inning, 2-1 game, that could be pretty big. Now, offensively, it's been uneven to start the year. There are some guys who are having good at bats, like Schwarber's been impressive. JT Realmuto has been pretty impressive. Bryce Harper pretty much won the game by himself offensively with that 3-homer night. But there hasn't been a big explosive night. There hasn't been a series opener against the Nationals. The Phillies had that game in hand. They won 4-0, but they had traffic on the base paths every single inning, stranding the bases loaded, stranding runners on the corners a couple times, second and third. A lot of big scoring opportunities. They weren't able to push things across. Are you seeing anything early on that concerns you offensively? I mean, anything other than this is 7 games?
I just think in reality they're not looking for their pitches right in the middle of the zone. I think they're still chasing pitches, which is, let's face it, it's been this team's MO for 2 years before this. So that's something that's kind of hard to change the stripes. I mean, it's just one of those things where I think they're a bit over anxious. It's early in the season. They start off 2-4, and I think you start to press a little bit. But I mean, that game, it was a 4-0 game, but it really felt like it was 10-0. It really did. I look at it this way. Those numbers are going to come. It's going to heat up, and this team's going to have one of those games where they go 7 for 10 in a game with runners in scoring position. The numbers will even off. I don't know if the games will ever even off. So, if you go 3 for 11 or 3 for 12 in a game and you leave all those runners out there, I don't know if that ever evens off. But the one thing they will do is they will score runs. I have a lot of confidence in this team. You brought up JT. He's swinging the bat extremely well, like you said. But another guy, Alec Boehm, I mean, he continues to not be that power hitter that everybody wants him to be. But he continues to put the ball in play, hit the ball where it's pitched, take what the pitcher gives you. That's more of what the Phillies need with runners in scoring position. If they're going to be pitched down the way, hit the ball away. Just hit the ball away. You'll get your hits. A base hit's going to score 2 runs with the bases loaded or runners on second and third. Just go up there, put the ball in play, and I think better things will happen. I mean, we've seen a couple of double plays with runners in scoring position and the bases loaded. It's just one of those things where I think they just have to be, if they're a little bit more selective at the plate, especially early on in the count, man, those numbers could look so much better right now.
Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on OpenTable. Yeah, it's been a pretty eventful first week to the season for the Phillies between the rain delays and the thought that some games were going to get banged. That initial Brave series, also just all the drama between these two teams. But I was fortunate, I'll say, as I got ready for this first road trip, Washington and St. Louis, to be off for that marathon delay. I know Spence was working through it. It's been this is not baseball weather. For example, Friday night, by the end of the game, it was 42 afterward that he could see that some guys were having trouble gripping the baseball.
Yeah, dude, it was funny. I know we talked to Rob last night in the clubhouse, and he was talking about how cold it really was, like down in the field, and I think he asked you guys in the press box to see how you guys were doing, but he was like, down in the field, it was so cold. To know the guys in the booth yesterday talked to Kyle Schwarber after the game and got a good social clip out there. And Tom asked him, when is it going to be baseball weather again, right? When are we finally going to get this warm weather? And Kyle's been, using that designated hitter spot by being in the cage, doesn't have to be on the field. So he's okay. But Bo, going back to the other day on Wednesday with that rain delay, when you were pitching back then, I say, years ago.
It was a while ago.
The old timer.
But did a delay like that, did that have any advantage as a pitcher, or what was going through your mind in a long rain delay like that when they have to get that game in on Wednesday? What was going through your mind? Did you ever have a game like that where you were just struggling, just let's get going?
I've been on the mound where they've called rain delays, 9th inning, 1 out, and you're like, really? Come on, let's just try to finish this thing. And there's nothing there's nothing you could do about it. So you go in the clubhouse, you play some cards. If you weren't pitching at the time it happens, usually what happens about a half hour into the rain delay, let's say the starter was in. All right, he's done, and they'll let the pitcher that's going in know who's going in. So you know who to prepare for. You could look at film. You can go and look at whatever you want. Get a stretch, and usually we know about 25 minutes before the game's going to restart. So it's just one of those things. Sitting around the clubhouse. You guys have been in the clubhouse. There's only so much you could do in there. It's not like it's not like a playground. Like everybody's doing backflips during a rain delay. one of those things where some guys are on their phones, other guys are watching movies, other guys are watching other games or whatnot. And then, you know, at about 20 minutes, when you know you're going to play in about 20 minutes, that's when everybody starts ramping back up. You'll see guys going in the trainer's room to get stretched, you know, guys going into the cage to take some swings. So it's a never ending thing. You know, once you get into the clubhouse, you kind of just grab a bite to eat and wait. And it's kind of boring, especially you're talking about what, 3 hours and 55 minutes after it was supposed to start. That's just hell.
And let's clear it up. There was no wedding, by the way, right? There was no wedding on Thursday.
Let's just clear no. The Phillies said no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how those things kind of just take on lives of their own. But I think they were able to get all those Reds games in. It's good that they were, because these guys, you know, cherish their days off. And Thursday was a day off, and kind of time to reset. You know, Spencer mentioned earlier that throughout this cold weather that a guy like Schwarber has been able to stay out of it a bit by hitting in the cage and not having to be out on his feet in the field. And what really sticks out to me with Schwarber early on is just that it's a different sort of hitter than we've seen the last 2 seasons. And yes, we're a week into the season. It doesn't mean that it's going to remain consistent for 6 months, but he's using the whole field. He's staying back. He's hitting lefties. You know, I wrote last week about how it was just 3 years ago that Kyle Schwarber hit 266, right? And when you look at the guy that we've seen the last 2 seasons who hovered in the upper 190s, low 200s, it didn't even seem possible that that guy could hit 60 points higher. Like, where are all those additional base knocks or opposite field bloops, or just, you know, ways that guys get themselves on base? Now, Schwarber has remained a very valuable player because he hits you 47 homers and he walks as much as he does. But early on, you know, it looks like a guy who might be able to give the Phillies more this season. He has not used the lower body stuff the last couple of years as an excuse for his offense. Now, maybe it affected him in the field or on the base paths, but all around, he's been the Phillies' most impressive hitter through a week. And, you know, we're more used to seeing Kyle Schwarber not get going until early June.
Yeah, I think the one thing he's doing is he's hitting the ball up the middle. I'm almost wondering that he has put into his head middle in, turn and burn, away, just kind of stay up the middle, see what happens. That's what it looks like to me right now. And he looks like he's got pretty good back control up the middle. And the one thing that does is that it kind of negates the whole lefty versus lefty situation, because what you're doing there is trying to keep your front shoulder in and just kind of stay with the ball and let the ball get as deep as possible. That's what it looks like Schwarber's doing right now. But, you know, maybe it does have a little something to do with his legs right now, because if you look at him running, I mean, the guy's running the bases well. He's stealing bases. He's going, 2 bases on a base hit. So that to me was a little shocking, to say the least. Watching him run, he looks like he trimmed down a little bit, and he looks like he's a little bit quicker for the most part on the base pass. And, you know, with that being said, that means he's probably very healthy on his lower half, which means he could trust himself on that pitch that's going to be on the inside part of the plate to turn on it. And maybe those are the pitches that he's thinking he could hit out of the ballpark. The other pitches, it's kind of just staying back, staying with it, and wherever the pitch takes you, he's taking it.
And I feel like it's so far too. I feel like his 2-strike approach has been a lot better than the last few years. I feel like he's really shortening that swing on the 2-strike approach, which is something that we haven't seen Kyle do in his first few seasons in Philly. Corey, have you noticed the same thing? Like, what have you seen from his 2-strike approach?
Well, yeah, I mean, in Friday's game, he had a 2-strike, 2-out, 2-run single to, you know, give the Phillies a 3-0 lead in the second inning of that game. And as we mentioned earlier, they stranded so many runners on that, you know, in that Friday win, that if Kyle Schwarber doesn't come through with that hit, who knows what kind of game it is? Who knows if it's 1-0 and you lose momentum after not coming through in that situation? So, you know, that was a spot that was big, and Schwarber was able to come through, and all it took was a single. It doesn't always take, you know, a 470-foot bomb. You know, on the other side of the coin, right, Nick Castellanos has not gotten off to a hot start, and he's taken more pitches. He's walked 5 times, which is you like to see that at least, because there are times when he's swinging at everything, but just hasn't been making that, you know, high quality contact yet. And with Castellanos, you know, he's been so up and down in the 2. really know, is this going to be a 275, 30 homer, 90 RBI season? Or is this going to be potentially like a 45 and 25 homer, 75 RBI season? Because that's a significant difference. I know I'm using basic numbers here and not like advanced stats, but he's in that lineup to slug Castellanos. He's batting 7th right now, and the Phillies 7-8-9 has been pretty bad to start the season. That's a guy they need to get going pretty much right away here, Rick.
Yeah, you know what? Until he has an idea of the strike zone, or the other thing that kind of occurred to me is that pitchers are attacking him differently. Not every pitcher is throwing the ball out of the strike zone. There's a lot of pitchers that are actually coming in on his hands. We saw it last night. He popped out to first base on a pitch that he jammed himself. And that's not Nick. I mean, a fastball, he's usually getting the head out and hitting the ball hard. I think his number one, his timing's a little bit off. I think number two, he may be guessing. And sometimes you get in modes where you start guessing wrong. And if he's doing that, I think he's got good hands. All he has to do is let the ball come to him. I think he's kind of jumping out again too, where he starts leaning forward a little bit on the ball. And when you start doing that, you're gonna find yourself jamming yourself. You're gonna find yourself out in front of the ball, hitting weak ground balls. And that's really where he is right now. I think he's just got to let the ball get deep and start trusting himself again.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've seen some stuff on social media over the last few days of just the Nick Castellanos when he was with the Reds, where he had that swagger, right? He had the pop on every home run, and he was kind of showing a little bit swagger. And it has been interesting that we haven't seen that from Nick, besides really the playoffs. I mean, we had that one time in Cincinnati where he stole home off a pass ball, kind of got in the pitcher's face, and we haven't seen that fire from Nick yet. I wonder when that will come, and hopefully it will come soon, especially as we get later in the season, getting towards playoff time.
Well, yeah, it's one of those like chicken and the egg things. When you're not hitting, you're not going to be jumping around. I mean, I can say that the guy he has swagger every day. He kind of lives his life like that. But yeah, like you want to see that because it's a contagious thing. Like when Nick Castellanos is going, when he hits a 2-run homer, there's just a different sort of vibe like that goes through that dugout and through that lineup when you have that one extra guy hitting, especially a Castellanos, because you think about what he was able early last season when he was one of the Phillies' better hitters. Even in April of 2022, before the season went kind of south on him, we still saw all those glimpses. You know, I remember when the Phillies signed Castellanos, I wrote about, I think I did like a 10 observations of the signing, and I thought it was just the perfect fit, the perfect bat after Bryce Harper, right-handed complement. I had watched Castellanos for all those years with the Reds and the Tigers and the Cubs, the brief time that he was there. I saw him hit opposite field double after opposite field double and show that 25 to 30 home run power and a high 200s batting average, sometimes in that 300 range. And I just thought, he's going to continue to do that for at least 3 of these 5 seasons that he's under contract. And he hasn't quite been that player, although he's been, a big bat for the Phillies. But they have so much money invested in this offense, obviously, and they need those guys to perform to get where they want to go. I guess like the one part of this, though, Ricky, is, you look around the landscape of the National League like we've talked about. The Phillies pretty much know that barring a slew of injuries, that they can kind of coast to a wild card spot.
Yeah.
So it's like the day-to-day of this. It's hard to know how much to make of any of it because you don't want to just assume they're going to be in the playoffs. But the reality is it would take a lot for the Phillies to like fall out of the race.
I think at one point last night, right after the Phillies game, I looked at all the divisions. The Phillies NL East has only won 9 games, obviously because of the bottom 2 teams in your division. But that's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. When you look around, I think the closest division to them when I looked yesterday had 14 wins. So, I mean, that's one of those, that's a telltale sign right there. You have 2 teams sitting in your own division that you don't even have to worry about. I mean, you not even a thought process about them. So, actually 3 teams, the Mets, Marlins, and Nationals.
Yeah, the Mets have been a disaster, huh?
So, I mean, think about this. You already erased 3 teams from the playoff race right now. Those 3 teams are going nowhere. I think we all agree with that. They all could be 100-loss teams. Can you imagine that in one division? I mean, I know they have to win against each other, but who knows how that's going to turn out. So, I mean, yeah, I think the Phillies are pretty much penciled in to at least a wild card spot. There's no doubt about it. And it's not like the Braves played well against the Phillies. They haven't played well since. So it's just one of those things where, you know what, who's going to get hot and when? So if the Phillies beat the Braves to getting hot, who knows?
Well, now Braves, I guess we're waiting on the MRI with Spencer Strider. He left the game yesterday with the elbow soreness. So who knows
where that was going to happen. It's just early for him.
Right. I was thinking a couple of weeks ago that, because I know I've had this conversation with you, Ricky, that it's almost like it's a rite of passage now for every young, hard-throwing, good starting pitcher that they're going to have Tommy John surgery at some point. And I was just thinking, like, Strider stayed pretty healthy the last 2 years. I know that they've kind of been cautious with him later in seasons, but for a guy who's throwing 99 every pitch, and if the Braves lose him, even if it's not the worst-case scenario, even if they lose him for, say, like a month or something, they don't have no team has someone who can step in and replicate Spencer Strider. It's a huge part of their team. They're
going to have to go fishing. They're going to have to go get somebody. There's no doubt about it. You cannot survive. If they lose Spencer Strider, they cannot survive. I saw Fried pitch that second game. He looked like garbage. It doesn't, you know what? Just because you've been a stud doesn't mean every year you're going to be like that. I think, you know what? Ripe for the taking. If he goes down, they're ripe for the taking.
And now we're still pretty early in the season, so we'll see. But let's close this out. Call it the bullpen. Ricky, get in here.
I am in here.
Sure, dude. I guess.
Leave the room and come back.
I'm trying to get out of this box, but they won't let me.
Yeah, okay. For all our YouTube or for all our listeners, he's trying to escape the box. Anyway, let's close it up. The Phillies debuted their new City Connect jerseys on Friday morning. It's been 50-50. I put out a poll, thanks to Ricky for the retweet. It got almost 1,000 votes on here. And it's 60-40. Do you guys have a guess on if they like them or not?
They don't.
60% is no, 40% is yes. Obviously, some comments throughout. I got multiple replies on Twitter. Just going through some, like a few of them. A lot of people don't like the font. Some people don't like the colors. I'm 50-50 on them. I think we need to see him on the field, and we'll see him on Friday in their first home game.
I'm with you because I was on our radio show on Friday. And one of the guys in there had that shirt, and we put him on the air, and it looked different when you see people. All the pictures that we saw, like dark backgrounds, and then they showed them. I don't know how. I don't know what. I don't like the numbers. I know that.
I think once we see it on the field, once we see 9 guys on the field for the first time, it'll be a better gauge. Once it's you see the full uniform and like it's in the middle of a game. But what I'll say though is that I've seen this happen time and time again in Philly sports when a new uniform comes out or something new in any way. I remember when Gritty first came out and everybody flipped out and hated Gritty, and then 5 days later the entire conversation changed of it, and it took less than a week. My opinion is that, especially on social media and especially on Twitter, the only time anybody likes something new is when everybody likes it. When everybody likes it, then it becomes groupthink, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. But there's a lot of people who are just like scared to put their own opinion out there if it differs from the crowd, right? So because the initial reaction was, what is this? That's going to cause a chain reaction of this stinks. I mean, I don't think it's that ugly. I think that it's probably going to grow on people. I also don't think that I remember when that Sixers alternate uniform came out that had like Boathouse Row, that people hated that. And I thought it looked pretty awesome. And it seemed like within a year that the conversation changed with that too. So I don't know. Get back to me in a couple months.
It's just, I'm kind of with Corey on this. I think a lot of people are like, I don't know if I like them. Am I going to like them on the field? I don't know. I think it's a cool shirt to just wear around.
For sure.
It looks like one of those shirts you would just wear around town. If you don't put a name and number on it, I think it looks fine.
The merch has been beautiful. I really enjoy the merch that's come out with it.
The hats are awesome. The hats are awesome.
And that's the thing. Talking to somebody within the organization, they said, you better get used to it because it's going to be 4 years of it. So whether you like it or not, it's going to be here for the long time. Every Friday home game. I'm excited for it. I think once we see them on the field, they're going to look great, especially under the lights. I think it'll look interesting.
And there was already a lady behind home plate at Nationals Park yesterday during batting practice wearing that new Phillies, a fan who already had herself one of the tops. So,
10 a.m. at Citizens Bank Park and 4 p.m. down at the ballpark.
So, yeah, I mean,
I love our fans.
We'll see. We'll see if it grows on people. But I'm going to get rolling. I got to head over to the ballpark for this second game of the series, Phillies Nationals. From there, they head on to St. Louis, and it does look like the weather's going to be a little nicer. It looks like it's going to be close to 80 degrees potentially Monday in St. Louis when the Phillies face the Cardinals. So thanks a lot for listening. I will. I'll catch you guys early in the week.